And recording in progress. All right.
Well, good evening. Hello, everybody. How you doing, Curtis? How you doing tonight? How are the people doing
I'm
out there?
what?
How are the people doing out there tonight?
The people I hope are doing great. I myself am ready for a one of our first videos. Our breakdown of our RSQ rating scale, which is different than the typical book one because you know what? We felt like 5 stars just wasn't enough. Not enough wiggle room. So,
Yeah, I feel like we talk about books all the time, and we were always talking about them on the like 1 through 5 Goodreads or like, the typical Amazon review or 1 through 5 stars. And we were always like, see, but if we were rating this out of 10, I feel like this book would get like a 6 or like a 7 or like a 7.5. But rating it at 5 was like, I feel like a 3 is like a mediocre book, whereas like it could maybe be a 7, which is slightly above mediocre,
yeah,
you
or
know?
7.5. Like it's not there wasn't enough variability for us because some books I was like, man, I wasn't a huge fan, but I'll give it a three. And the other one books I'm like, this was great, but it wasn't perfect, so I'm gonna give it a four. I'm like, they're not that close. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
that close.
Yeah. So I'm excited to do this video because once we do this video, we can start posting our reviews. Because now
Woohoo!
that they'll understand our rating scale, we can say, here's what we rate things.
Exactly. I
So,
think we said in our last video that we are gonna do For the Wolf first, and we both finished the book, and we both gone through our rubric and rated it. So we'll be able to make that video sometimes this week
yeah,
for y'all,
exciting.
the people,
The people,
people.
we the people. Well, yeah, let's jump in. So we have a 10-point scale that each point is tied to a category. And so we will go through the category and we will decide if it scored a point in that category or a partial point in that category. And we'll use those 10 categories to rate the book.
We felt like this
So,
was the easiest way to have a standard for each book instead of, oh, I felt this was good, I'm going to give it an eight. Well, now we can actually quantify what an eight means to us and you
yeah,
people out there using our scale. This is going to take off.
yeah, helps it go from the like, I feel this way to the I feel this way, but also if I'm giving it quantifiable reasons why I feel this way, here it is.
Yeah, essentially. Exactly.
So, the first category in our 10-point scale is developed characters. So, do the characters feel real with depth, growth, complexity attached to them?
The
Do the
biggest thing for me for
characters,
this category is like, do they develop or are they just like stat? And you're gonna have static characters, I guess, fine, but like the main characters and like their little buddies on the side and everything, the people that matter to the story, are they changing at all or are they the same person that they were page one? Because I feel in a good book, it's gonna have they're gonna develop, things are gonna happen, they're gonna change their views, they're gonna be impacted by whatever happens along the way in the story.
yeah. And for me, one of the big things is do the important characters develop on screen, right? Like I think
Yeah.
side characters can develop off screen, but if you're not giving me flashbacks or actual situations where the character's developing and you're just saying they went through this, like that's tough for me. Like, is it real development if you're just telling me a character went through something without showing me that how they developed from it?
Yeah, and I think you can get away with that maybe in like if it's a really short book and like it makes sense, but flush it
Yeah.
out. You get just write more words. Just write more
Yeah.
words.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's plenty of ways I think authors do a good job of getting by with minimal on-screen development, like referencing trauma and then using the trauma to show how that's changed to develop them. Like that's an off-screen development, but I feel like we've, you know, but
Yeah.
anyway, that's our first category, character development. So if we said yes, they had character development that we liked, they get a point. If we give partial point, half point, 0.25, 0.75, that's how we'd score a category.
All right. Point number two is originality and creativity. Is the story fresh? Is it something that hasn't been done before? Is it unique? And this doesn't mean like, oh, they did something that, someone else did 10 years ago, blah, blah, blah. Like you can do the same, essentially the same story basis and take elements from other story just with a fresh twist or, add their own, writing style to it instead of, this is Lord of the Rings 8 by a different author.
Yeah. Does the story feel like it's fresh? Does it feel like I was reading a book I've already read, or does it feel like something new, right? I think that's the nitty-gritty of it. Like I think
Yeah.
For the Wolf's a really good example. And we'll touch on that more in our actual review, but like it's a story that pulls themes or story ideas from other stories, but we both still felt like it was original.
Yeah. Yep. Point number three. How does the story end in its wrap up? One, is it satisfying? But two, is there closure to it? Is there a closed loop? Obviously, if there's a sequel, you're going to have some elements that aren't closed. But did I feel things were missing at the end for no reason? Did a side characters or even the main characters like subplot just not get resolved and forgot about? Or,
Yeah.
was everything, neat little bow?
Yeah. Not much more to add. Did the story close? Did we like how it closed? Even if we didn't like how it closed, was there a reason that it closed the way that it did? Right.
Yeah.
And then the next one, world building or setting, feels like this is a pretty simple one. Did you make me feel like I was in the world? Was the world fleshed out to the degree that it needed to be? Did you show me in my mind's eye what was going on around the character? Do I feel like I
Yeah.
understand? If you dropped me in that world, would I be like, oh, that's what you were telling me about? I can tell.
And I think what some people think too is, oh, it wasn't like, Brandis Anderson's Stormlight. It wasn't 1,200 pages long. They didn't go in depth enough. You can have a flushed out world in, 300, 400 pages if you do it right, I
Yeah.
guess. I don't know how to say it other than that. It's just, good writing at that point.
Yeah, and like
Uh,
Teller of Small Fortunes is a good one, and we'll have to do a review on that one eventually as well. But I feel like Teller of Small Fortunes it was really compact, but the world building was great. I felt like I understood the climate, the world around the characters.
yeah. Yep. And they pieced it along the way. Everything wasn't, this is where I am and this is how everything is. And you got it as the characters were going through. Oh, there's the piece of information I was wondering about. And oh, ooh, piece of candy. Ooh, piece of candy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
piece of candy.
Piece of candy.
And then the next one,
Pacing and structure. So this one, I feel like I didn't notice as much until I started reading more how much it matters with the pacing, and that's are we rushing through the story? Are we all of a sudden, oh, we're here, and then it's like 3 weeks later, now we're at our place, or it just feels really slow, like, oh, we've been in this forest walking for like 200 pages and nothing's happening. Like, you're just writing to write at this point type thing.
yeah, yeah, pacing is one of those things that I feel like it can feel subjective at
Yeah.
times, but I feel like you definitely get to the point where you can tell if something's slow or not, and it's like, okay, are we going to do something that's impactful to me reading this book? It doesn't have to be action, but are you building the world? Are you explaining the characters? Or are they just going to dinner and that dinner lasts 100 pages and all that happens in that dinner is they eat steak and potatoes? Like if they're
Yeah.
flirting with the antagonist or get like character developments happening, like that's different, but is something meaningful happening with the pacing of the book?
Yeah, and I think that's why some people have a hard time with, again, bringing up Stormlight is because he flushes things out so in depth, and people take all that information when things aren't blowing up and people attacking as, oh, nothing's happening, and blah blah. I'm like, no, you're learning along the way. It's just not your attention span might have to, you know,
Yeah. And
think.
I think Stormlight's a really good example because his pacing fluctuates so much, Brandon Sanderson's. Like
Mm-hmm.
without giving spoilers, like the pacing of the Sanderlanche is like I couldn't put the book down. I read 300 pages because everything was happening and it was so impactful. And then he does big expository scenes where he's showing you the world or getting really nitty gritty into the magic system or developing a character really up close. And it feels a lot slower. And it feels
Yeah,
like, come close and listen. I'm going to tell you about this character versus bang, bang, explosions, fighting.
exactly.
From there, emotional impact is the next one. The book, what does the book evoke? Strong emotions, joy, sadness, fear, excitement. Does it make you feel a certain way?
I and not every book has to make you feel, I guess, and you might lose a point or something, but actually, I kind of take that back. I feel like for the most part, a book should make you feel a thing. And it doesn't have to always be like, I learned the most valuable lesson and I'm going to change my life because I read this book. It could be just like, wow, I felt for these characters. Like, wow, they went through something. Now I feel bad for them. I want to feel like I'm part of the band, part of the group type thing. I think that counts towards that emotional impact.
Yeah, and I feel like it's that brings up a good point that these are the things for us that would make a book be a 10 out of 10, right? Like this book hit every single box. So maybe there's not like a strong emotional impact. Maybe it loses a point there and it's still like a 8 or 9 out of 10 book. And we're like, that was a really good book. It just didn't like the characters didn't make me feel, I don't know. It's hard to say because I feel like if I'm describing a good book, it has emotional impact. But if it missed out on something like that and we still gave it an 8 or a 7, that's still a
And
high scoring book, you know?
And that's the fun part about it is it's subjective. You know, we could think that we didn't feel anything from the characters as a fun story, but it was whatever, and you could be like, I'm tattooing this character on my thigh tomorrow. And that's okay. You're allowed.
Getting the Bridge 4 tattoo.
Okay, hear me out though.
Now, wait a
On our
minute.
foreheads.
RSQ tattoo on a part of my body.
Listen, if this thing takes off, if this thing takes off,
Uh, I feel like we got to say it now. What's the number of followers we need before we get the right butt cheek tattooed RSQ?
I feel like what's our even realistic goal? Like followers?
Yeah, yeah, like 100,000. That's like low, but also like, I feel like high, like, dang, it happened.
I feel like it's a high
Maybe
number
more.
that's not really achievable, but if we get there, I'll be like, wow, that's yeah. Let's just say 100,000. Who cares? Who cares?
All right, at 100,000 followers,
Yeah.
we get RSQ tattoo on the butt cheek or the lower back.
Hmm. I'm probably the butt cheek. Not, I don't know about tramp stamp RSQ, but
Butt cheek for sure. Butt cheek for sure.
all right, we're getting sidetracked.
Yeah. So next category is writing style and prose.
Yes, writing style is the writing engaging, fluid. Are we appropriate for our genre? I guess. I don't know if you want to go more into prose, but I feel like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Like, is it digestible? Prose. There's so many different types of prose that prose is another thing that can be subjective. But like in Empire of Silence, the prose feels very Old English. He draws you in with a classical writing structure, and then Brandon Sanderson, I think, writes really like simple and in your face, and different styles of prose that I think both cater to different audiences, but I like them both. So a point for writing style and prose. If I felt like you needed a spell checker or an editor, your prose or your writing style maybe didn't do it for me.
yeah, I don't want it to feel like clunky where I'm having to reread sentences because I'm like, what are you telling me right now?
Yeah, weren't you saying that the it was the books you were reading with those white and gray covers? Like one was Santa, one was uh
Oh,
didn't you say that his writing style could be
Levanthria series by AP
yeah,
Beswick. They were he's an indie author, and the first couple of books you can tell were like his first books. They weren't bad, but that was another one where pacing was like, all right, we're traveling, and then it'd be like 2 weeks. We made it to our destination, but what happened in the 2 weeks, we'll never know. We just time skip to there. Or, you know, the only way for him, I felt like to communicate a character was angry, he'd be like, and the character said they were angry, and I'm like, just I mean, it feels so like rudimentary, I guess, in
yeah,
the skill department. But it developed. I mean, over time. I mean, he wrote like 9 books in the series. He ended up being better. We can go into a review about those in the future. But
yeah.
I'm not trying to shame the indie author. I read them all.
Yeah, it's like we said, 10 points. If you don't hit all 10 points, your book could still be an 8 out of 10, a 7 out of 10. It just might not
True.
be this is a picture perfect book, right?
Hmm. Exactly.
Next one,
Um, yeah, so next one is engaging storyline. Was your story engaging? Was
I
it,
mean,
we talked
yeah,
about the ending being good. Was it good throughout? Like you could have a great idea, you set the premise up fine, and then the whole time I'm like, this is not enjoyable. I'm not following it, and I don't care.
yeah. It's kind of enough said thing. Do we need to say more? Was the storyline engaging?
Did you like it? Did you feel engaged? Can you hear the empty spaces? Next one, Dakota.
Meaningful themes and depth. Does it, I mean, young adult's a good example. Coming of age themes are normally meaningful. The character has to go through something. Did the themes inspire you, or did they make you sad? The, did the themes mean something?
Yeah,
And I think we were just talking about this with a recent book, and I don't want to divulge too many of our secrets before we start doing reviews, but like simple books can have themes even if they are short. But did it have themes at all, right? Did it have depth to it, or was it
yeah.
just simple? And
And I think we can throw in here, at least for me, negatively, like tropes. So like I love a
yeah,
good like magic school trope. If you know academia, we're all like you said, coming of age, Harry Potter, we're we've hit, 11 years old and never going to magic school. I love every second. But if you're using tropes to reel people into your book, and book talk is terrible. Use tropes to reel people into your book, like, oh, enemies to lovers, and if you liked, Red Rising and Brandon Sanderson and Lord of the Rings, this is a super version of that. And it totally is nothing like that, or you do a terrible job with that, you've just ruined the book in that category.
it's one of my
Or,
biggest pet peeves.
God, I
Is
hate that so
I don't know
much.
why it's so popular. Book Talk loves to be like, did you like Avatar? Did you like Harry Potter? This book is as if they had a baby, and it's like, okay, but now I'm going to look at it with the lens of two things I really liked, and the lens is going to be Avatar and Harry Potter. If I'm looking at through that lens and I don't see it, it's like I'm
Yeah, and I want to go in open-minded. And what I've been doing recently is a little bit of a tangent. What I've been doing recently is I won't read like the premise of the book before I read it. Like if someone's like, "Oh, this is good read," I'm like, "Okay," because I don't want to go in like, "Oh, it's like this," and I'll like it because blah blah blah. Like enemies to lovers trope, for example. I already know
yeah.
that they are enemies and get to get that feels like important, and you now it's just like know it. So, but
Yeah, and
anyway,
I think to continue that minor tangent, one of the things that we're really careful about is sharing feelings with each other before the other person has encountered or read
yes,
that in the book,
yes.
which I appreciate that about you and about our relationship is that like it's
Oh,
like
wait,
I want to encounter this with a I want to encounter this with a open mind and with my or maybe I feel like I don't know where
are
it's
you up
going
and
to be.
down?
Yeah, I'm up and
I'm
down.
left and right.
I want to
Dang.
encounter it with an open mind, right? Like I want to hit this experience in the book ready to like fresh eyes. And if someone has told me, watch for this is going to make you sad or happy or excited or mad, then it's like I'm already coming to it with that perspective and that can it
Yeah.
can make or break that situation. So I like to have fresh eyes when I get to something and have my own experience with it.
Yeah, that's a big thing because when, say, you finish a book before me, I finish before you, you're like, all right, I finished. I'm like, all right. And we don't, that's it. Like, I know you finished. It's not like, oh my gosh, I, hated it at the end, blah, blah. Well, now I'm going to go into it bummed out.
Yeah.
I want to be bummed out. And I'm calling out Ashley. This one, my friend Ashley. She is always like, so what do you think about this character? And I'm like, well, now I have to pay attention to this character more. It's like, what
Yeah.
happens with this? Why is this character so important? Like,
Yeah.
oh, well,
What's going
what
on here?
scene are you in? How do you feel about when this happened? I'm like, well, now I'm gonna feel some way, but
Now you're triggering my own feelings to match your feelings and not
yeah,
whatever feelings I was gonna have.
I'm susceptible
Me too.
to being swayed.
I'm easily swayed, yeah. Okay. We
All
hit
right.
meaningful themes and depth. The last of our official 10 is rereadability and lasting impact.
Yeah,
Which,
and I think very self-explanatory. Would
yeah,
I read it again? And sometimes even if I wouldn't read it again, the lasting impact I feel like can be strong.
yeah.
Like I'm trying to give an example. I feel like with Teller of Small Fortunes, lasting impact.
Oh,
Really
yeah.
liked that book. I don't know if I necessarily read it again,
Agreed.
but
Yeah,
it left a lasting impact on me that we'll get into in the future.
yeah,
So it can get a half point for that, and that's that.
yeah. Self-explanatory category. Those are the official 10. And then if we feel like it checks all those boxes and we're like, that was a banger, more than 10 out of 10, it was better. I loved everything about this book. Absolute fire. We can give it a absolute banger point to
Oh
make it
yeah,
11.
absolute banger point. The RSQ stamp of approval, 11 out of 10.
And then
Future merch, stamp of
with
approval.
every book, we'll also do an RSQ recommended. Do we recommend this? Why do we recommend this? Do we not recommend this? Do we have conditions with recommending it?
I feel like most of them will, if we recommend or don't recommend, like I feel like there's always
Yeah.
conditions.
Yeah, it'll be like, you'll like this book if you like XYZ, or you probably won't like this book if you're not able to be patient with the pacing, something like that.
Yeah, because I feel like we said, this whole list is subjective. If it ain't for us, it might be for you.
So to speed mode and do a quick recap, and if you're just joining us on TikTok or Instagram, hop over to our YouTube and watch the full length video where we explain all these categories in more depth. We have a 10-point scale that we are choosing to do because we feel like 5 points doesn't express
It
our
ain't
feelings
enough.
about books enough. So it'll score a point for each of these categories, and that'll give it 10 points. And the categories are well developed characters, originality and creativity, story end slash wrap up, world building or setting, pacing and structure,
Emotional impact, writing style and prose. We've got engaging storyline, meaningful themes in depth, and rereadability and lasting impact, as well as our added two, which don't count towards the point system, but wasn't an absolute banger. 10 out of 10, tattooing it on my forehead. And is it RSQ recommended? Do we recommend it to you guys as our target audience, our followers, our best
yeah.
friends, brothers from another mothers?
Oh, and while we were filming this, we also decided if we get 100,000 followers, we'll get RSQ butt tattoos.
I think we said right cheek.
Yeah.
And if we get 100,000 followers overnight, I will literally book it this week. I'll do
It'll
it.
have to be done right now. We'll do it. And then we'll have to put it on Instagram because I don't think TikTok would allow the right cheek picture. Or unless
I
it was
think if
this right
everything's
cheek.
blurred out, maybe
Yeah,
it's possible. We'll
it's
figure it out. We'll
possible.
post it somewhere. You'll see it.
But anyway, thanks for joining us. I'm really excited to have our rating scale out there because now we can start reviewing books and we can be like, reference our rating scale if you want to know why we are doing it out of 10.
Check the pin video.
There you go.
Yeah, so that
So
was
till
fun.
next time, you can look forward to some review videos from us. We'll do a RSQ review video together on For the Wolf. There we
For the
go, by
wolf.
Hannah
Yep.
Witten. And you'll probably start to see some solo review videos from us too.
All right. Well, thanks again, and catch us in our next video this week sometime.
Like and subscribe and ring that bell is
Smash
what
that
the
like
influence.
button.
Smash that like button like your mama told you.
All right. We'll see you guys next time on RSQ.